Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. We're three guys based in Utah. I'm Kirk.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Lyric.
And the goal of our show is to share stories and beliefs from different people local to our area.
Our mission is to bring civil discourse and allow people who hold different faiths a platform to tell us what they believe.
The show's model consists of an interview episode and a follow-up response episode where we'll discuss the topics that were brought up with our guests in the initial interview and give our take from a biblical standpoint.
Full disclaimer, not all comments and opinions expressed by our guests represent our own opinions. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. Lyric was getting a saucy face on.
I'm just trickling to breathe. No, I'm just kidding. Down to burrito.
We're glad you're here with us today. Today in the studio, we do not have a special guest this week. We do have Lana, though. She's a special host.
Attempts were made. That's all I'm going to say.
Our plan this week...
I'm calling you out, Jehovah's Witness. I'm calling you out.
We were attempting to get a Jehovah's Witness on the podcast today.
Now they're not going to come because I said
just because you just called them. They're not going to listen.
I mean, that with all due respect, I'd love to have a Jehovah's Witness on the show. I think we all would. I think that'd be really fascinating.
And it's not off the table. It's just off the table for this week.
Yeah, if we somehow don't get a Jehovah's Witness by the time this airs, please contact us.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to listen to this because they don't have power. They still like riding
the Amish
and stuff. Oh, is that the Amish? Oh.
Well, now they're really not
if you're Amish, we would really love to get you on here. Listen, if we got to go and like via paper and just convey your thoughts off of, write them
we
down.
are speaking into the devil's instruments right now. These microphones. I mean,
I'll tell you.
Before we go any further, let's shout out a loyal listener, shall we?
Do we have one?
We do.
Who?
We do.
Like
she was
3.
just on the phone with me moments ago.
Oh.
My friend Eleanor has been listening faithfully to this podcast for ever since we started. And shout out.
Yeah. I mean, the fact someone listens, the fact they didn't just put it on, hear Kirk's voice the first time when he was snake charming and leave.
I feel like there's a little bias.
Is there?
Shout out.
I don't know what you're talking about. We have 3 loyal listeners, so we might as well shout them out. You know?
Who are the other two?
You shout out
Lana
one.
and Sarah.
Those don't count. Sarah from...
My sister.
Oh. Shout out Sarah.
Yep.
Woohoo.
Sarah.
Listen,
no bias there.
Why not
Here's
get
the
shouted?
question of the day.
You're technically a host, so.
Whoopee, I guess.
Wow. Okay. This is a cluster. Here's the question of the day. Can you come into anything without having a presupposition? That's the thought that's been on my mind. Is there anything we can come into without a presupposition?
But here's the paradox. If you answer no, is that your presupposition?
I don't know. So when I'm watching something and somebody's like, listen, guys, I'm a big fan of debates. I like watching them. I like hearing sides of. That's why we do this podcast. We like, not that we want to debate, but we like hearing people's thoughts and opinions and things, right? So when I see like a debate where someone's like, oh, I don't want to debate you. You came in here with a presupposition. I'm grasping my mind here to think of anything you can go into without having a presupposition. Because I feel like presuppositions start from, childbirth. I don't know.
I feel like, you have them, but there are things you can do to combat them. And I think it's healthy when we do that. Now, not necessarily saying we should sway the other way just because it's the opposite direction of our presupposition. But I think, it's inevitable. Everyone has presuppositions. But if you recognize them and commit to combating them by looking at both sides, listening to both sides, researching both sides, and then find a healthy area where you land, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Let us know, our 3 loyal listeners, what do you think about presuppositions?
Is there something that prompted that question that happened in your life recently?
Did someone come at you with a presupposition, Lyric?
Well, okay, so I did have an experience today with a fellow person I know. Great guy, at least from what I know, seems to be, right? And we just had a really good discussion. But the whole time on my mind, I was thinking actually back to another debate. So I had this kind of debate discussion with a friend, and then it brought me back to another debate I had watched. We actually went to. It was Jeff Durbin, James White debated an atheist,
Yes.
two atheist guys. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the points like the atheists were arguing was like, well, you came into this with a presupposition that God exists, therefore like your argument's not valid. And I'm thinking, well, don't you come in as an atheist? Don't you come into this with a presupposition God doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I was thinking, I mean, what can we come into where we don't have biased?
Well, biased presuppositions, like you were just saying, they come because of our upbringing, our culture. There's a lot of different circumstances and influences that we're going to have. And I don't think that we can be completely without bias and presupposition when it comes to a list or any subject. I think we just talked about it, and the best way to combat it is, and I would just add a little bit of a nuance to, or maybe another detail to what Joel was saying, is when you're listening to the other side, you want to listen to the other side from someone who supports that side. Because when I was part of a denomination that really just didn't encourage reading from the other side. If they believed a certain subject or a certain doctrine or some viewpoint, it was, you need to stay and just read from these particular people. Don't read from the other side. Or if you were going to learn about the other side, you learned about it from the side that was against that particular subject or the other side of the subject, right? And I've found that as I've read from the people on the other side, if I'm trying to get a well-rounded understanding, no matter what that may be, you don't get it from the person who's against it, right? Because they're completely talking about and emphasizing, for the most part, the downsides, to the subject. You want to listen to the person who's for it. So for me, for example, and I have to go deep into this subject, but I've been on my mind lately has been infant baptism. I've shared some of that with some of you guys. And so I've been listening to a debate by a Baptist who's Credo Baptist, meaning adult baptism by believing. So you believe in we baptize when a person has consciously made a profession.
Believer's baptism.
Right. And between a Lutheran who believes in infant baptism, not just infant baptism, but regeneration baptism. In other words, when you're baptized as an infant, you're actually regenerated and have your sins forgiven. And I wanted to see and hear that. So this particular debate was a very cordial debate. It wasn't going back and forth at each other and attacking each other, but it had a moderator, and it was asking questions and having them think through all types of subjects, not just scripture, but church history. And I felt after coming out of that I don't agree. I wanted to come at it with an open mind, right? And then I came out of it still thinking that credo baptism, believer's baptism is biblical, but I understand the other viewpoint and appreciate it, and don't come at it as with a hostile, hostility, like hating the person.
Because I feel like that's the thing that presuppositions tend to do if we aren't consciously combating them, is we automatically assume that if somebody else doesn't have the same presupposition as us, but if we haven't researched their presupposition or what they believe, we tend to naturally have this hostility of automatically shutting it down, like, oh, that's not true, so I'm not going to listen to you. Instead of, okay, let's hear you out. Let's talk, let's come at it, like you were saying, with an open mind, listen to both sides.
So you can at least understand it, not necessarily agree with it.
And even respect it.
Yeah.
And that's what we want our attitude behind this podcast to be. I mean, if you think about what we just had our last guest on, who is part of LDS Church, and we let him. We asked questions. We respected him. He's come to our service before. We email. We think through. Asked if he ever needs anything, we would help him out if we could. In any way we could, and it doesn't matter that he doesn't believe the same thing, but we don't agree. Yeah. And so there comes a point in time where you may not be able to change the other person's mind, and you need to be okay with that. And what I find is people who aren't settled in what they believe, they get kind of upset when they're challenged and either want to win some debate because they think in the debate,
Right.
if they win it, they can maybe find worth or whatever.
Well, brings me to a book I read about a year ago, and like some people take these books and they're like, okay, this is scripture, like this is the way it should be. But I read this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. And, he was kind of like a Zig Ziglar type of guy, right? But he wrote this book, and it was, how conversing with people works and the psychology behind conversing with people. And one of the points he brought up, which kind of resonated with me, is because as humans, we're naturally sinful, we're prideful, right? We don't want to be wrong. And so when our viewpoints are challenged, even if our viewpoints are wrong or we have such a pride where we don't want to be wrong, we will defend those viewpoints even if we know there's actually no basis. It's kind of a stupid argument. The war's over, but we're going to keep defending that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just thoughts, but food for thought.
Yeah. Anyway, today we decided we're going to do a single episode and bring back, aside from this open table conversation, which we've been having, that is totally awesome, we're going to bring back probably one of our most popular miniseries.
I'm not sure how. It was just kind of us
I
rambling.
don't either, but we got we got views, we got feedback, people were loving it. We're going to react to popular religious topics on the internet. So we have a couple that we want to bring up. Lyric has a couple, I have one, and we're just going to talk about it and have fun with it.
I don't have anything.
Kirk has actually gone Amish. He doesn't use telephones anymore. Cell phones.
No.
He uses the ones with the
He's got
cans
his
and the
horse and
string
buggy
between. You
buggy.
like tie the string between the cans and
Yeah.
hello.
Need to see the beard right now. It looks great.
Snail mail.
Tin can, 5G. Ah, stupid joke, didn't land. Kirk's on
Wow.
10G.
Wow. Okay, Joel, go ahead.
All right, I'll start with mine. So this is more of a humorous topic, and I wanted to share it and explain it to the best of my ability because this is hysterical. Lyric knows who this is. Not a sponsor, but
We're welcome to it.
Has no idea who we are.
he literally has no idea who we are. But we follow this. He's not a Christian comedian in that he like does stand-up comedy, but he does like online comedy,
Like skits, like an
he
SNL
does
type
skits.
of.
His name is Taylor Ransom. Go look him up. He is hysterical. But he has created this universe around your stereotypical mega church.
Basically, yeah, making jokes about mega churches.
Yes, and not that it's completely accurate in every sense, but this universe that he has created is Daddy's House Mega Church, and the head pastor is referred to as Senior Global Pastor. And it's this idea of this like snooty mega church, and his head of security is Samson, and Samson makes sure that Senior Global Pastor is always safe, and he has a rebellious teenage son who kind of goes behind his back, and Samson's always going after him. And
is Andrew going to turn out that way?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Who are some of the other characters? Oh, we have the intern, and the intern is
the
unpaid.
So basically, not that Joel didn't clearly convey it, but
My goodness.
Taylor Ransom, right? He's created this world revolving around making fun of. I know. I'm just going to add characters. He's created this world around making fun, poking fun at mega churches. So you have all these characters.
What are some of the characters?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to get to. Okay. Let me finish that thought. So you have the pastor, like Joel mentioned.
What's his name?
Senior Global Pastor.
Okay.
Yeah,
SGP.
Senior Global Pastor.
Does he have a son?
Yes. I don't. Do you remember? I don't remember
The son's name.
I don't think any of the besides the bodyguard. I don't think
Samson has a name.
Yeah.
I don't think the intern has a name.
Just the unpaid intern.
So me as somebody who's never gone to a mega church in my life have this is how I perceive based off of these comedic videos.
So anyway,
Which can get you in trouble, by the way.
I know. Listen.
Well, yeah, and this is all satire. We're not saying anything bad about mega churches.
I have no room to speak. Like I said, I've never been to one.
Yeah, I mean,
There's just a lot of cliches.
there are
revolving.
cliches.
Yeah.
All I know is our church doesn't bring in camels during our Christmas sermons.
My word.
There's always talk of like Justin Bieber showing up at the mega church and like doing a special. Okay, so anyway, Taylor Ransom builds this big fan base. He's probably got over 1 million followers on TikTok and YouTube, Facebook.
X, like Kirk likes to say.
Twitter.
And his followers got so loyal to where a scandal arose yesterday.
Oh, I did
Yes.
see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So
it's-
here's what they did.
No.
And there's developments in it too, and I'm going to play a video for you at the end. His followers go into Google, find the headquarters of his denomination. So this is a Assemblies of God mega church headquarters. They changed the
Wasn't
name.
it like in Texas or
In Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
They changed the name of this headquarters of the church that Taylor Ransom goes to. Now, this is a headquarters of like 200 churches.
yeah, Assembly of God's big.
They change it to Daddy's House Megachurch.
On Google.
On Google. So if you
Yeah.
were to Google this church, it would come up as Daddy's House Megachurch.
Like Assembly of God.
Dad's on his phone.
Googling it right now.
It might have been
it
taken
gets
out.
worse. It gets worse.
Yeah.
So
It gets better.
then his followers start to leave Google reviews on this church. Things like, I'm only here for the Holy Grounds coffee, which is like the coffee shop. And they're like,
What's the name of
it's
the church?
great.
It's Assembly of...
I would look up like Assemblies of God, or like Daddy's House Assemblies of God or something. Anyway, they are leaving these reviews like, oh, I tried to see Justin Bieber in the green room, but Samson pushed me out before I could get there. But I did get a glimpse of Senior Global Pastor's face, and it was the holiest experience I've ever had. All these funny things. Okay, so the whole leadership of this church spent all day meeting trying to resolve this problem because they have no clue how these people changed it. So they spend all day meeting. They finally change it back to the actual name. And seconds later, the followers go back in and change it back again. So all that being said, it's the funniest thing. Look it up.
Yeah, well,
All that
I'm
being
trying
said,
to remember what the actual...
they left an official statement.
The church
The
did?
church left an
did.
official statement on their Instagram about this, and they play along with the whole joke.
is
So I'm going to play this in the
hilarious.
microphone. It is so funny. They play along with the whole joke. You'd think they'd be furious having to deal
Yeah.
with this.
I'm kind of shocked.
I'm gonna play this in the microphone here.
Ministry Network, we've received lots of inquiries after Christian comedian influencer Taylor Ransom posted a screenshot of a name change to our office. To confirm, we are not changing the name of our office and have been in communication with the global lead pastor of Daddy's House Church to clear up any confusion that may have arisen. At their recommendation, we will be working with Samson Smith Security to help retrain our interns to manage the web presence. Thank you and have a great week.
So Samson
that's a
is,
good way to go about it,
isn't
I guess.
though? Like that is the coolest thing. They could have been furious, but instead they play along with Taylor's joke. We just wanted to bring that up here. It was a very funny scenario.
Taylor's response was pretty funny too. He was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
You guys are gonna get me fired.
Yeah.
But this is hysterical.
But this is also, he was loving every bit of it. It wasn't his idea. His followers just became so loyal that they
Yeah, if you're fired as an intern, do you really lose anything? I mean,
Hey.
unpaid intern.
Kirk, how does the word unpaid intern sit with you? As senior global pastor of a...
When it comes to our only intern,
Your only unpaid intern.
he's paid.
Don't bring. No. We're done. We're done here.
Ask him.
A sore spot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Joe, how are
he
you
gives me a
paid?
place to
Ask
live
him
in.
where he rests his head
Yeah.
and what unlimited buffet he eats every day with his uncontrollable appetite.
I'm basically like Lyric Jr. I can put it down.
Yeah, except Lyric Jr. doesn't seem to gain weight.
Actually, well, we don't have to go there. I've been bulking and I've been putting on some really good weight.
This is just...
But that's all I'm
this
saying.
episode would just be called Joel's Promos. Like... Speaking of, I think we have a sponsor today.
Oh my goodness. How do you feel about mega churches, Kirk?
You ever been to one? You been part of one?
I have.
Would you rather have the snake charming church or the mega church?
Oh my goodness.
I think the biggest thing when it comes to size of churches is it gets difficult to have it's not impossible, but you have to work hard at discipleship and being a part of each other's lives. You can have people just kind of get lost in them because they're so big, and usually, especially the worship services. So Kathy and I, we both attended a large church in our when we got our bachelor's degree, which was from a Bible college. It was a college that was connected to the local church. So the church is running, something like 4,000 people. And they had small groups. They would use the word small groups. They would just use whatever sections or whatever. I mean, the auditorium was sectioned off, and different sections would get together at different times and houses and stuff. So they were doing a job. They had Sunday schools and things like that. So they had ways of trying to get into each other's lives and to disciple. And then where I got my master's from, Shepherd's Theological Seminary. So the Shepherd's Church used to be Colonial Baptist, but they changed their name. It was a church plant, and now it runs up in the thousands too. And so being part of that and seeing how they ran their church, it's just I think that's probably one of the biggest things that you're going to find is the bigger a church gets, the harder it is. You got to have some mainstays, like, okay, we're going to teach the Bible, we're going to be doing that no matter what size we are, and anybody can come and hear it. But you really need to have an additional, how are we doing life together? How are we talking to each other about the gospel, and how are we doing all the things that Paul talked about in the Bible that the church is supposed to do? Rejoice when others rejoice, comfort when others need comforting, exercising our gifts, really reaching out into our communities and doing that kind of thing. And to do that, you've got to be able to be more, it gets harder, but it's not impossible to do.
And I feel like Shepherds, I mean, I've encountered them in my travels growing up, and from what I've seen, it seems like they do a decent job of that. At least they did a couple years ago when I was there.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to find any perfect church. If it's not a mega church by any means, but we do have a church located here in, I guess it would be a mega church here, but a church in Provo that's probably one of the bigger evangelical churches. I mean, again, to put things in perspective for our listeners, I mean, we serve in an area where in Utah County, we're looking at like 88.9% of people that are part of the LDS church. So if any mega churches here, it's the Latter-day Saints. That's the mega church in this area. But we do have one church in Provo that does have a couple hundred, I don't know, maybe 200-300 people in it. And even then, we've talked about and how we've heard from people that it's kind of difficult that they don't know some of the pastors' names, or there's not really a discipleship, or they don't know people. I mean, it's natural. And if you don't intentionally try to, and this is a lesson for us. I mean, we're starting, we're a smaller church, but these things still apply, right? We want to be able to be in each other's lives and talking about life together. How does the gospel affect us? What does it mean as we read scripture and think through how does that apply to our lives, and how do we get into our community? So it affects smaller churches, but it's a little easier than when you get into the hundreds and thousands. You can lose that focus if you're not intentional about it.
Yeah.
Should we go into my segment? I think that leads
Your
into
segment.
my article.
Okay,
Lyrics
our
segment.
next segment is
Gotta do the guitar
lyric.
riff.
Hold it up.
Welcome to.
No, wrong one.
Jeez.
That one.
Oh yeah.
Man, I even made a little list and I got it wrong.
On the topic of it, so we all tried to. Oh, actually, sorry. Let me rephrase that. I'm the only one who tried to bring any, articles today.
we
came
don't have to
prepared.
get into that.
I actually got one that came to my mind that we can talk
Now
about.
he has.
But now he has one. So like what Kirk was saying, large churches, while we're on the topic of large churches, I was reading an article from Christian Broadcasting Network that just came out. And the article's titled Church Switchers, More U.S. Christians Are Hungry for Authenticity in the Community. So I was just kind of scanning through this article, and it touches a little bit on what Kirk was saying. Basically, the article's saying that, 60% of people will leave their original church at some point in time. And 60% people leave a church because they're moving or school or work or job. The other 40% leave for varied answers, whether it be theology or disagreement with members or something like that. And so, it kind of touches on, they interviewed this pastor of a Presbyterian church in North Virginia, and they said, why do you think a lot of people leave churches? This was just his opinion. He said, quote unquote, the first is drift, or people leaving a church that no longer follows the Bible. Others leave out of disinterest because they no longer believe themselves. Disagreement, or people leaving one church for another, is final, and he says the most common category. And then he goes on to say, all Christians, I think, hold those same core beliefs in common, but on those secondary issues, there's disagreement. So I guess what I'm going to lead into with this is, Kirk, as a pastor of a church, how do you deal with maybe you have secondary issues you disagree with? How do you run a church where there's going to be variations of belief and keeping everyone together?
Well, first of all, it's I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's really hard. Our church, being as small as it is, and just for our viewers, I mean, we have, like this past Sunday, we had like 50, 55. We averaged something like 30 to 55 in our services and the people that we're dealing with. But even with that small congregation, we have a very diverse demographic. I mean, we have people that have come from the south of the United States, like Alabama and Missouri, some of the Midwest. We have people that have come from California. Of course, I'm from North Carolina, and we've had people from Texas. We have African Americans that attend. We have Asians at one time that was here. You know, we've had different demographics, different people, walks of life, and every one of those people are going to have a different background and different personalities,
different presuppositions, and
Nice.
and when it comes to that presupposition, that's going to be theological too. So they were raised in a church. When you're raised in a church, when you come to Christ, a lot of times the people that were influenced or that influenced you coming to Jesus, there's an affection that grows for those people, naturally so, right? And that's a good thing. It can be a bad thing when that person or people, their opinions, their second rate, the second tier of theological doctrine kind of starts becoming primary because they said so. In other words, this is what I believe, and for me, I'm telling you this is what you ought to believe, even though there may be multiple beliefs about a particular doctrine. In the theological world, we use the term like theological triage. There are certain doctrines that we say the Bible speaks very clear on, and those are the foundational doctrines of Christianity, and those are the ones that we're going to die for. Like those are the hills that we're going to die on, right?
Yeah. Then
you've got the second tier of, well, the Bible's clear on this, but it's not as clear. And there are different interpretations out throughout church history and even today. And those are going to be some that we fight for because we still believe, but we're not going to hold on to them as tight as the first one. And then the third tier is, man, the Bible's not very clear on these at all. And so we may have an opinion about these, but we're going to make sure that people understand this is our opinion, and we're not going to hold that up as a doctrine. The problem is when you have people that hold the third up to the first, right? Yeah. And if you got people who, I was just going to say, if you have people that you follow and have told you this, and you're like, oh yeah. And then all of a sudden you are part of a church, or you come to a person and have a conversation, and they're like, well, hold on a second. There's another interpretation here. Or there's something different. What about what the Bible says? My experience is that those people, they get upset about that, because they've never heard that, right? So to answer your question, I'll let you weigh in what you want to say. For us to try to keep a unity in a church, we want to make sure that the Bible isn't, and everybody would say this, right? Well, of course we want to make not everybody, but most Bible preaching Christianity churches would say we want to make the Bible the essence of our doctrine and what we do, what we say. But that can be construed in a different way and maybe not emphasized. We want to make sure that if we're teaching something from the Bible, that I'm giving that the Bible as the evidence, and I'm saying this is why we're drawing it from this. So in other words, you're trying to teach people how to read, how to interpret the Bible on their own, to come to these conclusions on their own, not just because I am saying it. And then the other side of that is you want to give grace toward people when they have something different, specifically in those two different categories, the second and third kind of theological triage groups.
Yeah, and you and I were having a conversation in our meeting today, kind of about that, how, like, yeah, dude, we're going to die for the gospel. We're going to stand for that. You know, that's what our salvation rides on. When it comes to these second and especially third things, it's important to show people the evidences and then teach them to think and interpret for themselves, which, I mean, you did a very good job of in your last sermon on Sunday. Shameless plug. Go look it up. It's on YouTube. Basically, he said, there are different interpretations of this passage. These are the mainstream interpretations. These are why people have these interpretations. Go read this yourself and see where you fall in it. And that way, we're not telling people what to believe.
Yeah.
We're giving biblical background. But just for example, in these triages, like the triage, we would put the gospel, Jesus' salvatory work, as number one. Number two would probably be something like what we were talking about earlier, baptism, whether believers' baptism, infants' baptism. And we could probably put a lot of interpretations of eschatological. Okay. Things in the third, things like where you fall with the millennium and things like that. Would you say that would probably fall into the third?
My question was, what could you give a few examples of tier one most important things that Christians believe, tier two where we have differences here, and tier three where it's...
No, I think Joel did a really good job. I think there's others you could put into that category.
Yeah.
But for sure, the person of Jesus, I cannot see, the more I study the Bible, the more I study church history, I see the person and doctrine of Jesus Christ as being so essential. And including in that, you can't necessarily talk about the doctrine or person of Jesus without talking about what we would call the Trinity. In other words, we believe there is one God. There will only ever be one God, and nobody else will ever be like him. And he is transcendent, he is holy, he is a one and only. And yet that one and only God became flesh. He was not flesh before, he became flesh when he came to this earth. Those things are super important when you start talking about, okay, well, how does the atonement of Jesus Christ save me? Well, if you don't believe, I see a disconnection in the fact that you don't believe that if you believe the atonement of Jesus did something, he shed his blood for my sin. Well, if God is not God, the only God, and Jesus is not God in the flesh, then what exactly is so particularly special about Jesus if he's just another human being? And so you do have certain liberal theologians who would say, well, it's not really an atonement at all. It's just an example. I have more respect for them because at least they're saying that this man, Jesus, that they believe did come, but he's no deity. There's no fact that, he's God in the flesh. He just set a good example for whatever, for justice, for trying to stand up for the little man and all those things. Okay, great. You're wrong. I don't believe that, but I have more respect for that than to say, here's a man who's not God, or he's a God, so you got multiple gods. Well, if there's multiple gods, what makes Jesus distinct from the other gods? What makes him so special that his blood being shed on the cross forgave me of my sins and cleansed me and made me right with the one and only true God? Nothing. But if you say that there is only one God, and I understand that there's mystery here, and there's people that don't understand this or say that there's a contradictory. And I mean, I've heard a lot of the different arguments. Was Jesus schizophrenic? He's praying to himself. If there's only one God, and I get that, I do. But nonetheless, if God could completely be understood by our finite minds, he wouldn't be God. We would. There's an aspect of this thing. We're not him. We're created by him. He is high and holy. His thoughts are not our thoughts. So at the end of that argument, I just say, if I have to settle on something, I'm going to settle on, I don't know everything there is to be known about God. I just know what he has revealed to me in his word. That is where the Trinity comes from. Yeah. And we find there is only one God. There is no other God, but yet that God came to earth in flesh, claimed to be it, did the miracles, rose again from the dead, saying, no man takes my life from me. I freely give it. And I have the ability to take it up again. And we realize that he came down here and did that for us so that we can be saved. So I know that was a little bit of a rant, but to me, you see what I'm doing there? I'm arguing for that first tier in a way that I'm just not going to quite argue about post-millennialism or amillennialism or premillennialism or pre-tribulation dispensationalism or covenant theologian, all those things, preterism. We could go into all types of that, which I love that too. I probably would talk about it in the same type of passion, but nonetheless, that's a tier 1. Tier 2, baptism. Baptism's important, but I see the arguments from the other side and I can respect them. And even though I don't agree with them, they would agree with what I just said wholeheartedly. I mean, even Catholicism.
On the tier 1.
Yeah, even Catholicism. Now, the application of some of those things is where we would get into an argument with Catholics, where I think confusion comes in. This is where we would get into the Reformation and how Luther was part of the Catholic Church, and he's like, "Yeah, there's confusion here. You're saying this, but yet we're having all these indulgences and all this stuff to try to get out of purgatory." I'm just seeing salvation by faith, right? And the fact that it's what Jesus has done. But when you talk about the person of Christ and Trinitarian doctrine, even the Catholics, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, people like that are agreeing with us. And that's where, again, we've talked about this before, and we just had Kurt Rogers on, right? The LDS aren't, right?
Jehovah's Witness aren't, from at least what I've seen.
They aren't. And they have a different God. They have a different Jesus. And we will respect them, we will love them, but we will also say that we don't agree with that, and can't say that their doctrine is right. And the idea that, God's going to be the ultimate judge of who gets into heaven and who's not. But the Bible simply says that if you don't have your faith in the gospel is what saves. And that's what we're talking about here, is the gospel, because Jesus is the gospel. Right?
Communion would be tier 2, right?
Yeah, I would say Lord's Supper, but again, getting into the different nuances about that. The Catholic Church believes that the bread and the wine actually becomes Jesus's body and blood when you consume it. Transubstantiation, it transforms. Yeah. I would even say I've changed kind of on that. I kind of go back and forth because a lot of people would say it's just a memorial, you're just remembering, and that's true. But people like Zwingli and Luther and them would come out with what's called consubstantiation. The body and the bread and wine don't literally become the body of Jesus Christ and the blood of Jesus Christ, but spiritually it does. When you start talking about that, like, why are you going to prove that?
Yeah, that's. I feel like that's the epitome of, why it can be insignificant to make tier 2 and tier 3 of the triage tier 1, because when you're starting to argue things like that and hang on things like that as your gospel, it's like why this? Why is this your?
And we could pull somebody up on YouTube or have somebody in our studio from one of those, and they would tell you, like, this is important. This conveys grace. This is going to lead you to a relationship with Jesus Christ, right? Yeah. And we would say, I would say to that I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. I think that God uses tangible gifts, tangible things to draw us to a closer spiritual relationship with Him. We would say the thing about preaching the Bible. I would think preaching the Bible draws me closer to Jesus. That's a physical thing that's going on, right? And it's spiritually, it's going to draw me. Well, they would use the same thing when it comes to the Lord's Supper. And I would say that I think I I like putting more emphasis on that in a consubstantiation way. Like the Bible uses the Lord's Supper to draw us. They'll use language that feeds us. You know, well, you're talking about, I'm eating a little piece of bread and I'm drinking this little cup of juice, and but it's feeding me. Yeah, it's feeding you spiritually. And they would go even further, say that those elements are feeding you spiritually. Well, the other part of the nuance is, well, the remembrance of what Jesus has done for you. So it's just drawing you back. That's what Jesus said. Do this until I return. Remember these things. So we're remembering Christ. So see, the different nuances kind of, and that's fine. That's what I mean. That's a tier 2 type of a thing. But I do believe there's no debate in the fact that we ought to do it, right? Scripture is really clear that we should be partaking of it. How often and what do you think about it? That's where you start getting into some of the differences.
And with the LDS, they believe that it's like necessary for salvation, which is like specifically baptism and communion or sacrament.
Yeah, we heard Kurt talk about the sacraments.
I was going to say, from what I heard Kirk saying, it doesn't seem like anything's required. Everybody can get salvation. Just depends on what level. Yeah, just depends on what level of it you're going to have. So
out of sheer curiosity, and we're coming up on time here, but where do you think most would tier the continuation of
canon
spiritual gifts?
Like, that's a good one. Yeah.
Supernatural spiritual gifts. Obviously, that's not a tier 1.
Yeah, because our church didn't get the one with snakes. We, for whatever reason, God has not blessed us with...
Have you heard him?
Actually, that's true. We need to go pick up like a corn snake from the local Petco, and
yeah,
I'd say it's tier 2.
Tier 2.
Yeah,
that's a tier 2. Wow.
Yeah, I would say that. Yep,
interesting.
Well, that's why they brought their intern in, because I have a connection with snakes. So,
do you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Dude, I've been bitten like 4 times. I mean, I'm basically Paul on the island.
Oh my goodness.
Wait,
island of what?
Now you got to elaborate. What snakes? Where? Why?
The island in my head right now that I want to say is not even close to the island that it is.
It's not Jesus that's schizophrenic. It's Joel.
No, what?
The island of Hawaii. Paul was on Hawaii.
No,
when he
what's
came
the
over.
one? Why don't? Okay, I'm going to tell you what I want to say, and you're going to laugh at me because it's so stupid.
What do you want to say?
Madagascar is what's in my head right now. And I know that's not it, but I'm like, no, what is it? Malta? Look at me. I knew it was an MA.
Madagascar.
I don't think, is Malta an island?
I don't know. Look it up.
No, Malta's like landlocked.
It was on like the
isn't
beach
it?
or something. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was Malta.
Let's see. Hold on. Malta.
Maybe it wasn't an island.
No, Malta's not landlocked. Malta's a country in Europe.
There you go. He was on his way to Rome.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
When he got shipwrecked.
Right.
And it's not Patmos.
Patmos, no.
It's not the Crete island.
Yeah, Malta's
your home place.
Yeah, Carpathos.
Yeah, that's where Lyric's from.
Yeah.
Well, not actually. I was born in the US of A.
That's his lineage.
My lineage is Carpathos and Crete.
Do you want to know more about Lyric's backstory? We have an episode.
No.
Go back and listen.
And there's so much more that could be said about all of these, like specifically the gifts of the Spirit. I mean, I myself, we started this podcast off with presuppositions. Well, when you're told that the gifts have ceased, that's one side, cessationalism, then that's what you believe. And this is what I was trying to say. I believe that because I was told that, right? I'm a young Christian. People love me. They treated me well. I don't by any means doubt their genuineness. But when you hear that, that's what you believe. And then you come across someone's like, nope, they're still going on today, and you're like, what? That's not true. You're stupid. You're an idiot.
Well, and then you come across people that are that abuse the idea of it, like charismatics, that completely blow it out of proportion.
He's
with
calling out
snakes
the charismatics.
And then it's like even weirder for you.
Right. So, I mean, we got to be able to cut through all of that.
Yeah.
And this goes back to, how do you get past your presuppositions? Well, if you want to get past your presuppositions, you will.
Presuppositions.
You have to work hard to do it. First off, you got to admit you have them.
Second, you have to consult Joel Osteen.
No, you can't consult him directly. You got to buy the yes no ball that he sells. The
Yes.
the
Oh,
advice given shaky water ball thing. What are those called?
8 ball.
No, is it
Magic ball.
magic
Water
ball?
ball.
I think
have
it's a
no
magic
idea.
ball.
Where it's like, should I eat today? Yes, like pops.
No.
I set myself up for that one. That was bad. Should Lyric inhale everything that comes across his face?
No.
Does that stop him?
No. It encourages him. They don't want to see us eating.
Well, thanks for tuning in today. We know it was a bit of a looser
It's a
episode
strange
topic,
episode.
but we hope you enjoyed listening to some of our back and forth, and we did. I mean, we had good conversation. It was good.
All right.
Well, Lyric's going to go put it down in the church kitchen.
Oh my goodness.
We don't have any food left in the kitchen.
You're
You ate it all
lying.
last time.
I know there's food there. You hide it behind the fridge. It's maybe not good, but
We have a secret
Lyric
fridge in the
knows.
wall.
Lyric's
After
going to
every
go
podcast, he goes
steal
searching.
goldfish from the kids'
My
ministry.
goodness. My goodness.
And he won't use the fancy cups because Pastor's wife doesn't like when Lyric uses the fancy cups for his goldfish.
Red Solo Cup.
Oh my goodness.
Shout
I
out.
fill you up.
Shout out to
Party.
Toby Keith.
Toby Keith.
Passed away this week.
A real American.
He was a real American.
Yeah, you're a fake American, Kurt.
I am a fake American compared to Toby Keith.
That's true.
If you have any questions for us, feel free to email us in the email linked below.
J Squiggle.
Oh my goodness.
At Yahoo.
That joke
If
is dead
If
twice
you want
over.
a shout out in our next episode, also email us.
If you want
if
a
you want
shout
to
out,
sponsor us,
if you want a shout out in the next episode, get to know Joel
gotta
personally.
say, watch what you say here.
Yeah, only if you're a female.
All right.
Listen, guys, if you have a pet snake you would like Kirk to charm, go ahead and send us an email with that photo of that snake.
At where?
Why don't we have
We'll
a church
see
like
you next
we need a
week.
faith and fellowship like social media?
I had to talk to that kid over there, that guy.
Yeah,
Unpaid intern.
We have a Faith and Fellowship Facebook and a Faith and Fellowship YouTube.
Well, there
We
you
need
go.
an Instagram and an X.
Why don't you take
I
care
don't know
of
about
that?
an X, but I'll think about creating an Instagram. Stay tuned. See you next week.
We really need to
Bye-bye.
get a snake for the church.
What an episode.
What a way to end the episode. We really need to get a snake from
She has it.
We're raw until Joelle doesn't want us to be.
Oh my goodness.
That is
My goodness.
and when dad
fact.
cusses, but that's about
Well,
it.
yeah. That's pretty often. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's pretty often.
Hey, but I make fun of the entire city of Spanish Fork and nobody takes that out.
Yep.
Yep.
That was the oddest episode we've ever.
It was pretty
There were
awesome,
some good
though.
points. Kirk reeled us all in, corralled us.